we're now getting down towards the end of this series, and today we're looking at an interesting area called what I call the high ground. And I just use the word high ground as something that we could all relate to very easily, whether we are spiritual people in terms of our orientation or whether we're just basically logical kinds of people. And so, what do I mean about the high ground? The high ground is a place that within us that we have the capacity to put something in that place. And really, it's probably a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. There's only one piece that truly fits there, and we will kind of come to that probably in the final one where we're summing up things. We will look at how that works out. But today we're going to look at just this issue of the high ground. Probably it's a journey for us to find out about our high ground, because from time to time there will be things that will go onto the high ground. I guess as a child going along, you would want to have a parent on the high ground and somebody you look up to who will always be there for you, and those sorts of things happen. And I kind of think that that's pretty normal. But over time, the high ground can become a very important place for us, and who's on the high ground and what's on the high ground can determine a great deal what we do with our lives. And so you kind of think, well, what's a common thing we put on the high ground? Well, if you go through the education system, you get educated, and most times in most families they want their children to be successful and do all sorts of things. And so getting a high mark at school, getting a good degree, getting a good job, being successful, all of those things are things that the secular world would see as something to aspire to. And it has a place. But in terms of the high ground is saying, well, at the end of the day, and I can remember, and I can use myself as an example of that on my journey that I found interesting was that at some point in time, as much as I had been successful, there was a time when I came downstairs one morning and I got on my knees and I just said, God, I'm back. Now that was as way out as you could get. But I think looking back on it, I realised that I'd been on a journey that was incredibly precious to me. A lot of good things had happened. But somewhere in it, I had got away from having a personal connection with the person that could have been on the high ground. So there was a time when the Creator was on the high ground, but being busy doing what He'd led me to do, I'd got caught up in being more interested in what I was doing than in the connecting. And at that point in time, I had this awareness that what I was doing wasn't working, but there was an awareness, there was a time when I knew there was something there that was really, really important. And so I need to talk about the Creator and the high ground, and I'll use my own example as being something that might help. At the age of 12, I was in a difficult situation, partly out of the child's sexual abuse and things that had gone on for me, and it had got very much out of hand, in which a parent had discovered that this was going on. This was a young girl that I was with. No, I knew she was wounded, and we were kind of sort of connected in a kind of way, and so it all came out, and so I was in deep, deep trouble. And so I remember this day at school. I sat under a tree, eucalyptus tree, and I saw the policeman come up to the school, go into the office, and all I knew was he's come to get me, take me away, he's going to lock me up and throw away the key. That was my 12-year-old's sense of what was going to happen. At that point in time, I just prayed. And when I prayed, I'd been to Sunday school and a few things, but I mean, in terms of knowing God, all I knew was if you did the wrong thing, you're in deep trouble. And so I just said to him, God, if you will get me out of this trauma, I will serve you always. I finished saying that. I looked up and the policeman walked down and out of the school. The headmaster called me up and he comforted me in a way I needed to be comforted. And the next day I remember thinking, God, you answered my prayer, but in a way I totally I didn't think would happen. And so from that point in time, I knew that God cared for me and that it was a personal thing. So it got away from being something out of my experience, and I share that with you, that most people at some point in time, maybe all people at some point in time, get an opportunity of knowing God as being real and personal. And when that happens, I think it can change your life. It doesn't need to, but it can. And so that for me was where I discovered who could go on the high ground. Okay, so that was 12. Then I go off to boarding school and I get into BHP and I start on a journey. And so in that journey, God comes to me again when I was at a point in time where I had finals in industrial chemistry and I saw a movie called Not as a Stranger. In the movie, there was a medical student tying knots on the back of a chair and I get this motion from my spirit saying, do medicine. So, being the kind of person who does these things, I just went off, didn't sit for the finals and started medicine. Got to 5th year wondering, what am I doing here? I can go from anywhere from radiology to skin to surgery to dermatology. What am I doing here? And I delivered a baby and held it up and there I was, plump. And so I knew that I was to deliver babies. And my mate who was there assisting, he said, Fitch, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. And it did not matter because I now knew what I was being led to do. And so the high ground in all of that was God prompted me in my spirit. By then I'd accepted God, and so I think God's Holy Spirit was within me as well, and together they had begun a healing process. And so that was just me giving you information about high ground for me. But at some point in time, of course, I put myself on the high ground because people were saying how well I was doing it, and I just said, yes, it's me doing it, and wow. And so at some point in time, I got on the high ground. It was me. I was seeking all this acknowledgement, partly out of my own personal insecurity, because I think sexual abuse is something that never ever goes. It can get to a low level, it can be, but it's always there ready to bite you. And so the other part of it all was, as I said before, I hadn't connected with Mum, there was no connection, and I knocked on Mum's door throughout my life. I knocked on her door, hoping she'd open the door, but out of her woundedness, she could never open it. And it wasn't until after she died that her friend told me about what was back of Mum's difficulty, and that was her father committed adultery, and there were certain things that happened, and they had left my grandmother behind in England, and she'd suicided over there, and so that was a big secret that Mum had between her and her father. So she had this deep connection with him out of this trauma that she turned into own. So she was never available to connect in that kind of way. So I just mentioned to you this high ground as being something that we need to discern about. You say, okay, somebody had me on the high ground, one of my counselees. He had me on the high ground and I did something that he thought I shouldn't be doing and I fell off the high ground. And so I'm just saying, if we put people on the high ground, there's nothing surer that eventually they're going to fall off the high ground. And so there was an issue in that I needed to mention about the high ground, and one is the issue of mentors. I need to say this because mentors are so incredibly important. They are people who will come into our lives, and they are people we hope over time they will have integrity, they will have maturity, they will have experiences in the particular area we're in where they can give us some guidance. But we know they've got clay feet, and we know that they haven't got every part of their life in place. And so there's something that we need to know. There's a difference between having somebody on the high ground who is unable to get anything wrong, and if they do, they fall off. Where a mentor, hey, they are human and they are there for us to enjoy. And I've been very graced by having a dysfunctional mum and dad situation. I needed to know that there was people in my life. When I asked God in that situation to help me and I would serve him, he was there, and along the way sent along, firstly he sent me to a boarding school which I felt saved my life. I had 4 years of growing up and maturing there, and that was really important for me. And so I just found that there were times when I would say there's been about 4 men who've been wonderful mentors to me, and there's been probably about 3 or 4 women who've been incredibly mother-type people in my life. And so I don't put them on the high ground. I thank the Creator for putting them there. And so I'm just saying this high ground is a very interesting place. We all have it, and when we sum up, we will actually look at what happens in that situation. And I just think putting anything on the high ground that is that has been created, whatever it might be, whether it be people, whether it be a career, be it being successful, all those things really don't add up to a pile of peanuts. And so I leave that with you as something that you can look at, but you need to be aware the high ground is a very slippery place. That whatever you have there today can be gone tomorrow. And so it's a place that we need to continue to be aware of in terms of guidance. I hope that helps you in that area.